turned that off. What's that? 2:30. Do you have, no, you don't have any. Yeah, you got budget finance at 3.
See this? Well, vacation. I want nothing. I want to be totally healthy. Well, that's right. Sitting on the beach, I'll be doing for 12 days. So. Yeah, my wife went down Saturday and went down. What about it? It's called Delray. Delray Beach. Nice little community.
Well, 2 to 3 will be done. Well, the calling laws from 10 to 11.
You got to come. I do. You're celebrating the victory.
Fusco. Fusco here?
We may have to certain things. So. But I'll try to be there for part of it. But it's all going to be at our house. What time would you start? Starts at 10. We're not going to be there at 10, is it? We're not going to be there at 10. I said, nobody's going to be there at 10. Oh, no? Okay. 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 But it's going to be at the Alpha House? Everything? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Because Delta, we're going to have to do, Delta's going to do one, but I think we're going to do some of the grocery stuff. We haven't decided. Probably, we're going to we'll see it later. Oh, really? You gonna say that? Oh, that's the one that's at the corner of Julian Exchange? Is it close to? Oh, yeah. I know where you're talking about. Hi. I'm good, how are you doing? Good. Right.
Let's go.
Right.
He's not, he's running the show. Uh-oh. I'm gonna turn my mic off.
So is there a public hearing? No.
Public hearing was held last week for that.
So we're just gonna do time?
We could just tonight, not for tonight, for today.
Defer to tonight?
Temporary time.
Okay.
Tonight.
Okay. Okay. And these other things? These are time? From 10 to 23? No, 10 to 20? These are all filed. So 10 to 20, okay. Okay, thank you. How you doing? I'd like to call the planning meeting to order, please. All members are present except Mr. Fusco is not here today. May I have a motion to accept the minutes from the previous meeting, please?
Motion to accept the minutes?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. We have several public hearings today. Okay. Oh, here we are. Okay. The first public hearing we have, those individuals here to speak at any of the public hearings, will you please stand and be sworn in by a representative from the law department, please?
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, nothing but the truth? Say, I do. Thank you.
Okay. The first public hearing is ordinance authorizing a conditional use to construct an oversized garage at 369 East Catawba Avenue and declaring an emergency. Is there anyone here to speak? Please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Walter Roberts is requesting permission to construct a 30-foot by 20-foot detached garage on the property. The garage is to be situated on the north side of the property, 3 feet from the property line along the north and 5 feet from the property line on the east and west. It would be of wood frame construction colored with white vinyl siding with gray shingles on a gable roof to match the house, and will have gutters and downspouts. The garage would not be out of character with the neighborhood. There is a 6-foot solid fence on all sides to screen the property from neighbors. The garage will be only 24 square feet larger than what is allowed by code. Petitioner has stated that the garage would only be used for residential purposes of storing vehicles, tools, lawn care, and other personal equipment. Both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval.
Those in favor of speaking on this ordinance, state your name and your address, please.
My name is Walter Roberts, and I live at 369 East Catawba Avenue in Firestone Park area. And I've lived in Firestone Park since I've been married the last 25 years, and the garage I currently have is starting to get to a point where it needs some work, so I thought it would be a perfect time to build a bigger garage that I want. I have an old car that I keep at my mother's house over in West Akron, and I'd like to build a big garage so I can keep the car in my house.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this ordinance? Is there anyone here to speak against? Seeing none, hearing none. You may be seated, sir. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions by members of the committee? Mr. Kamer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairwoman. I just want to make a comment to the committee to inform them that Mr. Roberts did reach out to me through the telephone. We had a good, long conversation in regards to what he wants to do. And obviously, we talked about our community, and I drove by his property. It's well-maintained, and I support this. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kamer. Are there any other comments from committee members? And there are 3 conditions. Are those only 3, Mr. Antonucci?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. We will again present this evening, and depending on the committee, we may vote on it tonight. So you're welcome to come back this evening. Okay? Is there anything else we need to do with that? I don't think so. Okay. The second public hearing is ordinance authorizing a conditional use to establish a medical marijuana dispensary at 737 East North Street and declaring an emergency. Is there anyone here to speak in favor?
Madam Chair, that's the third item.
Yeah, that's,
You skipped one. Just move up to...
See, I have them numbered differently. Okay, yes, I have this one as third. Excuse me. Well, let's go back to the one that's listed as my fourth. Ordinance changing the name of First Merit Circle to Huntington Circle and declaring an emergency. Mr. Antonucci.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Huntington Bank desires the name change to reflect their ownership and clarify mail delivery. The planning staff recognizes the circumstances due to the change in ownership and is in agreement that the street name should be changed from First Merit Circle to Huntington Circle, and both Planning Commission and planning staff recommend approval.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this ordinance? Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak against? Seeing none, are there any comments, questions by the committee? Mr. Neal?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a real quick one. It doesn't look, as I look at the map, no one's impacted by having to change letterhead or anything by this?
That's correct. Huntington is the only address on this street, so.
Okay.
You're welcome. Okay. Now we'll go to the fourth item, the next one.
Third.
Yeah, I don't know what number 1 was, but anyway, ordinance authorizing a conditional use to establish a medical marijuana dispensary at 737 East North Street and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Bloom Medicinals proposes to renovate the 21,150 square foot one-story brick building to dispense medical marijuana. This aging building's footprint will be reduced to 3,500 square feet. The reduction will allow for a 7-space employee parking area situated at the rear, along with a 10-space patient parking area in front of the structure. The interior arrangement of the floor space will be renovated to allow the patients to be processed securely. All products will be stored in a highly secured vault with no more than a 30-day supply on site. Additional security measures will include card access, control doors, panic alarm devices, and interior motion-activated sensors. Petitioners state they will create at least 8 to 10 full-time and part-time jobs that will generate an estimated annual payroll of $450,000 per year. Signage will conform to state requirements. The proposed medical marijuana dispensary was strategically located near the intersection of East North Street and North Arlington Street. This location is in close proximity to State Route 8 and SUMA Akron City Hospital. Since the dispensary is not open to the general public, the daily traffic from registered patients and caregivers will be minimal. The proposed renovations will be a significant aesthetic improvement over current conditions. Any applicant for a medical marijuana dispensary site license must satisfy numerous and rigorous state of Ohio requirements, and the petitioner was awarded such a license in June of 2018, and both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval, subject to the conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Antonucci. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Please state your name and your address, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Stephen Funk at Retzel and Andrus. I'm here on behalf of 127OH LLC, which is the corporate entity that petitioned for the conditional use. And then with me is Andrew Wagner, who is a representative of the company. And he's here really to answer all questions you may have about the...
Is your microphone on, sir?
Yeah, I think so. I just need to talk closer to it.
Okay, thank you.
So just to give you a little quick background about the owners, they do come from a long track record in the medical industry, and they have a track record of success. They actually have a dispensary in Illinois, and then recently opened one in Maryland. And I think that was one of the main reasons why they scored so favorably in the state process. There were 376 applicants for licenses in the state of Ohio, and 56 were awarded. Each applicant can only receive up to 5 licenses, so the max was 5. And 127OH LLC was only one of 2 companies in the state of Ohio that received the max 5 licenses. So including Akron, they're going to have dispensaries at 4 other locations throughout the state. They also were only 2 applicants in Akron that received a license. So it scored fairly well compared to other applicants in Akron. And with respect to this proposed location, they did spend a lot of time searching for a good location. One of the things that the city staff had recommended was finding a location that was near other medical uses. And so this particular location is at East North and North Arlington. It's actually just down the hill from Summa Health campus. And it's therefore close to Route 8, and it's centrally located without really being in a downtown district or an entertainment district. So the patients can readily access it, but for the most part, it's going to not be very visible at all. There's not a lot of external signage associated with it. It's really just a quiet use that only the patients will be coming to that facility. It'll operate much more like a medical office than a retail space. And with respect to this particular property, it is going to be a substantial improvement for the area. Right now, it operates as a boat repair facility, and there's a large number of boats that are stored outdoors. So all of those will be cleaned up. The building is going to require substantial renovation that will be done. So in the end, it's going to be an improvement to the aesthetics of the area. And we did receive the approval of both the staff as well as the Planning Commission. So other than that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Just a minute, please. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone else here to speak in favor of this ordinance? Is there anyone here to speak against? Please state your name and your address, please.
My name is Doug Romstad. I'm the owner and president of Ken Tool at 768 East North Street. My manufacturing facility is right across from the proposed facility, and my parking lot is right next to it. A study by the University of California correlated higher rates of property crimes like vandalism and burglary with the presence of medical marijuana dispensaries. A white paper by the California Police Chiefs Association cited numerous adverse effects to having these around. They regularly attract drug dealers looking to undercut the prices of the medical marijuana and drug users, both with the prescriptions and without the prescriptions. Those are just 2 of the quick studies that I found in my research around medical marijuana dispensaries. I know that the facilities themselves require fairly significant security. My concern is what happens outside of that bubble of security. You know, my employees park their cars in the parking lot right next to this. I certainly worry about burglaries there. I certainly worry about burglaries and break-ins at the factory right across the street. We've all heard, especially in Northeast Ohio, about how difficult it is to find good employees. I certainly have a concern that a potential good employee would come to my facility and see this across the street and say, wow, I don't want to go to work for Ken Tool because I don't want to get my car broken into, or I don't want to be around this environment. I worry about the impact on my existing employees when they see things like this. I certainly think about the increased foot and vehicle traffic because of the draw here. This is pure hearsay, but it is certainly believed in the media that it's pretty easy to get a medical marijuana prescription. And what that means is it's not pure, I needed to control my cancer pain. It's a lot of people who just want to smoke some pot. And that's the crowd that I worry about hanging around my building during the day. And that's all I had.
Is there anyone else here to speak against?
Hello, I'm Al Hilkert. I'm the president of Boats and Brothers at 520 North Arlington, which is also directly across the street from the facility. We have 18 employees. We have 14 in Akron. My concern is both the safety of my employees and the security around and outside of the security perimeter of this new facility. We have had a number of cars in our parking lot. It's an ex-concrete company, so the front of it is a large parking area, which every truck in Northeast Ohio believes is a good place to turn around, but also we have had to call the police because of people congregating on the property. So that would be directly across the street and creates a security concern and a safety concern for me. I would also note that North Street to the west, Home Avenue to the east, and Dan Street, which is would take you up the hill, all do not have sidewalks after you get about 300 yards from the facility. So people that would be walking on North Street from Cascade Village or from West Akron would not have any sidewalks once they get past Cascade Village and past where Ohio Edison is there. That's the area where the current garage is for the Akron Public Schools. That area has no sidewalks. There's no sidewalks going up the hill towards Kenmore Construction, and there's no sidewalks going up the hill on Dan Street. So those are some concerns that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak against? I saw your hand. We may ask you some questions, sir, but not at this moment. Seeing that we have no one else new to speak for or against, are there any questions or concerns by the committee? I do have some questions about the conditions, Mr. Antonucci. And I want to make sure that the individuals in the audience are aware that one of the conditions expressed in the ordinance is number 8. That this particular conditional use will be reviewed annually. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So all of the concerns that we've heard from those individuals who have businesses nearby, those things could be addressed if we approve this at some point during the annual review. Yes. And at that point, I'm assuming that we could pull the conditional use permit, which would mean that these folks would have to find another location?
That's correct.
Put in another request. Okay. And number 9 states clearly that there will be specific safety and security measures that would have to be approved by the fire and police departments. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. And there are a number of other conditions, but with those 2 things highlighted, I just want to make sure that we've addressed some of those concerns. Not that we were not going to take a vote today. It'll be tonight if we decide to do that as a committee. Are there other questions or concerns by committee members? Mr. Swirsky?
Mr. Swirsky? Thank you. Microphone.
It was on.
Well, you got to put it close to your mouth. You got to put it close to your mouth.
Good job, Bob. Okay, so what does a person have to go through to be able to purchase marijuana? Can they get marijuana for, is there a certain list of diseases that they have to have? Can they get it for a headache?
Yeah.
Can they get it for recreational purposes, as has been asserted?
Yeah, so thank you for that question, because we didn't do, we did actually a much lengthier presentation.
The mic,
before-
sir.
We did actually a much lengthier presentation before the Planning Commission. This is the first time we've heard any objection. So a lot of the comments that were made actually, I think, can be easily answered and addressed, and one of those being what you just asked. This is not like the California program. The Ohio adopted its own program that is very, very restrictive in terms of who is eligible to come to a facility and who's eligible to receive products from the facility, and then specifically about the types of products that can be sold, one of which is you cannot sell marijuana that would be smoked. So I'm going to let Andrew Wagner kind of explain in greater detail who can be registered to come to the facility, what the process is for verifying that they are registered, and then the types of products that can be sold, if you could address all three of those.
Yes, absolutely. My name is Andrew Wagner once again. To start off with your question of who can receive this medication, the state of Ohio has identified 21 very debilitating conditions that include seizures such as epilepsy, cancer, irritable bowel syndrome, ulcerative colitis, and those measures. So this is not, as Stephen has said, on the same realm of how the California programs or the programs out west initially rolled out. Ohio has taken a very strong stance and has learned from other very reputable programs such as Illinois and as Connecticut. So Ohio has really done their due diligence, and I believe through the measures that they make patients take, as well as what they make physicians go through. Physicians, to be able to recommend, once again, they cannot prescribe cannabis because it's federally illegal. So physician actually has to go ahead and be certified by the state to be able to recommend medical cannabis for patients that are interested and that have one of the 21 qualifying conditions. So it's not just every doctor. The state definitely makes the physicians go through a rigorous training course that they have to renew every year just to be able to certify patients.
Okay, and it's just for these 21 diseases that are very serious diseases. Like in California, if you have bad headaches, you can get medical marijuana, correct? But not in Ohio.
Not in Ohio. Now there is chronic pain, but once again, it's the physician who is making that determination that it is debilitating, it is life-changing, and that all other medical opportunities for treating that symptom have been at least tried out by the patient. So this is not something that a patient who comes up, with a spinal cord injury, you should assume that they're automatically going to cannabis. It is on the physician themselves to make sure that other medical treatments have been explored.
If you could just talk briefly about the type of products that are.
Absolutely. So our facility will serve patients and caregivers. A caregiver is someone that is tied to that patient, and the state allows a patient to have a caregiver for purposes of mobility issues and whatnot, which also helps address some of the concerns of people walking to and from the dispensary and whatnot. So patients who do not have transportation ability can assign a caregiver to them to come legally purchase the cannabis and transport it back to the patient. The products that we do sell come in the actual flower form, so the cliche bud that you would think of, but Stephen did highlight that cannot be combusted. We can only sell the dry flower form for making your own edibles or for vaporization, which is not combustion. It just uses heat and to help lift the moisture and the cannabinoids that are in the plant. So there's no combustion or incineration that your lungs are inhaling. Other methods would come as RSO oils, or also known as cannabis oils, that are sublingual. A small little drop would be administered underneath the tongue. Same with tinctures. They're a little less potent, usually a 1 milliliter dropper. And there would also be edibles that would be available. Once again, Ohio has stated that none of the products can appeal to children, and none of the packaging can appeal to children. So you're not going to have chocolates that are in the shape of a cannabis leaf, and you're not going to have these out of nowhere, really vibrant and cartoonsy packaging that a child would be enticed by. For the most part, all the medication that we do, that we will sell, just in the other states that we operate in, it comes in pretty much a prescription vial with the whole lab results because all of our products are independently tested by third-party laboratories within the state of Ohio to make sure that they meet and exceed certain criteria, such as there's no residual solvents, there's no fertilizers, or there's no organic organisms. So the quality of the cannabis itself too is also above and beyond what the media has typically portrayed out in the areas such as the West.
How do you address other security concerns, safety concerns that were raised?
So if I could, we're a little bit different than many applicants in that we've got a track record. So this particular, the owners of this facility have a medical marijuana dispensary in Illinois. And if you could just talk a little bit about the record of that facility with regards to security issues.
Yes. So since 2014, we've had our Illinois medical marijuana dispensary that is actually located in a strip mall with obviously tenants on either side. And our Maryland facility that opened up in January of this year is also within a very popular strip mall right next to a Navy Federal Bank. In our years in operation, we have never once had any type of potential burglary, break-in, assault, or any violent crime or any crime in general. We have not even had issues with dispersion or diversion of cannabis from a registered patient or caregiver to a non-registered patient or caregiver. All of our security measures, inside and out, do help promote the safety around the area. We employ surveillance cameras on the outside of the facilities as well to help monitor that there's no loitering, there's no lollygagging or any suspicious activity that's going on. The tenants in our other facilities, our co-tenants in our other facilities, are actually very appreciative because what we bring to them is another level of security for their surrounding areas. And actually, that is something that has been very welcomed by the tenants the co-tenants that we work with.
And if I could just add to that our application includes fairly extensive description of all the security measures that are associated with it. And the city of Akron itself has adopted a fairly comprehensive licensing ordinance that has its own set of regulations that, as a condition of a conditional use, would need to be complied with. And so the last point on the whole thing is that with regards to the site itself, we do in our package have photographs of the Illinois facility that shows the amount of signage. So this is a very not visible facility that basically all it would say is the name of the facility. It doesn't have any advertising. It doesn't have any other sort of required external signage other than just identifying for caregivers where to come. So there's no effort in any way for anybody for them to advertise for anybody to come there unless they're a registered patient or caregiver.
Thank you. Are there other members of the committee who would like to ask a question? No, just Mr. Neal.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just had a question. I know it was noted that there was an LLC, an investment group. Can we have the names of the parties that are part of the group?
Yeah, sure. You want the owners of the...
So we are a family-based company. We are owned by our CEO, Nicole Van Rensburg, and her brother, our COO, William Hollander, as well as their father, who is Nate Hollander.
Thank you.
And talk a little bit about what their background is and how they came to the industry.
Yes, so in 2013, Nicole and William decided to go ahead and apply for a medical cannabis license in Illinois. Prior to that, their family company, and still is to this day, has more than 150 combined years in the medical field, from multi-specialty medical clinics all the way up to a fleet of portable MRI and diagnostic and laboratory testing facilities and machine or vehicles. So we have an extensive background in the medical industry that is, inherently tied to quality patient care, and that is something that we bring to our medical marijuana facilities as well, is that the patient care is our number one priority, and that is why we have been successful in the markets that we do operate in, as well as made us stand out in our application, because we are not only saying that we can do it, we've already demonstrated that we have this ability to provide unmatched care and really help citizens, especially the citizens of Akron and surrounding areas that need access potentially once they've exhausted every other type of medical treatment.
Mr. Kilby?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to ask, have you reached out to these two gentlemen that came down here to speak against this? Have you spoken to them?
As I indicated, we applied for this back in November, and we're in front of the Planning Commission meeting. We were not aware of any objections. This is the first I've heard of any objection.
I would like to see you guys.
I'd be happy to speak with them.
You can use a conference room over here if you want to talk to them. Okay, one fellow says he doesn't want to talk to you, so I don't know about the other one. Go ahead. Pardon me?
Okay, and I'd be happy to do that as well.
Thank you.
Are there other committee, council members who would like to address this ordinance? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Ms. Keith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I recall correctly, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I might be putting you on the spot. If I recall correctly, any of these companies that come before us as Bloom Medicinals has come before us with this, that the mayor has the authority at any time, whether you have an issue with another facility in another place that we are made aware of, or even in the one here in Akron, he has the authority, I believe, to come in and do what is necessary. If I recall from the original, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but
maybe just help me out a little bit. So authority to come in and do what's necessary from a safety perspective?
Whether it be safety here in the Akron area or as something that has happened in another area, he's able to take action. If I believe Shamus, when he drew this up, that was one of the things, but you're looking at me.
That's correct.
Actually, when you look at the conditions that are listed, the permit is reviewed annually.
That's
so
correct.
At any point in time, there are concerns or issues that we have problems with, the permit probably could be pulled.
Yes, and there's also a requirement for a city license for these as well, so that's going to be part of that process.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. So first of all, the state of Ohio has probably the most restrictive medicinal marijuana law in the entire country. So you have to get a state license, which I believe you guys have secured. Then this council, put forth our own Akron license that Madam Chairperson, Councilwoman, absolutely gets reviewed on a yearly basis. So if there are concerns or nuisance actions or things of that nature, that license can be revoked year over year if need be. From a safety perspective, all of these applications are vetted, then they go through Planning Commission before they come to you with the Planning Department and Mayor's recommendation, yea or nay. So we feel very confident by the time it comes to you. We've looked at both the state and the local, have looked at any and all nuisance concerns and made the appropriate recommendation. But certainly in his capacity as Public Safety Director, the mayor has a pretty broad authority to around safety and security. And again, I would say that council's best action if a medicinal marijuana dispensary, producer, or cultivator becomes a nuisance would be that annual license that they have to come back for.
And one of the conditions stated is that they have to meet the safety and security measures outlined by the fire department as well as the police department. So those are some things. Sir, the public hearing is really over. The public part. Is there any objection by committee members? Okay, please.
I would like to just say the first notice that I received, and I may have missed something in the paper, but the letter I got from the city of Akron is dated September 7th. So so I apologize for not having all the relevant information on the security and all the relevant information in the application, but I did not get notice of this until 2 weeks ago, and no one has contacted me, so I would have been very open to that.
Now, you will make yourself available to meet with the proponents of this after, okay. There will be another hearing this evening at 7 o'clock, so please make yourselves available to attend. And at that time, the committee could either take action tonight or take time, okay? Thank you. I think those are the public hearings. Going back to the items on the agenda, some previous items. Okay.
Item number 4.
This is the first reading? Okay. Ordinance authorizing a conditional use to construct a mixed-use residential and retail development at the northwest corner.
Excuse me, Ms. Moak, this is for October 1st. You just want to take
Yes.
time on that one?
Don't I read it first, and then I take time?
I guess you could, but it's not going to be heard till the 1st.
I know, that's what I was going to say. It would be referred, advertised and referred at the end of my statement. Development at the northwest corner of the intersection of South Hawkins Avenue and Alden Avenue, and declaring an emergency, and this will be referred and advertised. Item number 5, ordinance authorizing a conditional use to retain a solid fence within the setback at 983 Jean Avenue and declaring an emergency. It too will be referred and advertised for public hearing on October 1st. And number 6 is ordinance approving the site plan for Signet Jewelers to install a parking lot at 375 Jet Road and declaring an emergency. And I think Mr. Brent had some additional information to share.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee. As you know, we had a public hearing last week on this plan. This ordinance is to approve the parking lot on Smith Road, expansion of the parking lot on Smith Road for Signet Jewelers. In order to address some of the residents' concerns in the area about the traffic and the accidents, Signet has determined that they will non-perform and delay the entrance out to Smith Road for now. They will construct the parking lot as per plan. People will be able to exit and entrance off of Gent Road. And they will look next year, hopefully, at a traffic study that the city will complete, and then revisit the entrance and exit onto Smith Road.
Was this read last week, Mr. Brent, or this is the first reading?
Second.
Second reading?
We referred it last week.
Okay.
Oh, okay, that's it. So we would ask if we could get suspension of the rules and passage for the parking lot construction on the plan. And we will add to the plan a note indicating that the entrance exit will be non-performed and delayed until a future time.
Okay. Are there questions or concerns by committee members?
Just like to hear what the ward council person.
Sure, I was going to ask her to speak at some point. Mrs. Keith, you would like to make remarks?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to thank Chief of Staff James Hardy for coming out there and meeting with the residents of Lake of the Woods on Friday. And what has been decided is a note, as was explained, that will go in to the report, to the resolution, that says an independent third party will do the traffic study. We will put that in, I will request it in the capital budget for the 2019 year capital budget, and hoping that the company, the party that is chosen is independent and doesn't have any active involvement in the area at that time. So it truly is a good study done with no interest any way or other. And I just want to thank, we know that Signet is growing and is, they're situated in a very nice area that still complements the city of Akron. However, I will say that the residents of Lake of the Woods had great issue, brought it, had the attention of the chief of staff and others, and what we are now asking for is a note to be made that that curb cut will not exist until a traffic study is done, otherwise it will come before us again. Correct.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments to be made? I think, Mr. Brent, we spoke earlier as well because, you know, as a resident of Ward 8, I got a number of phone calls as well, and I did ask you to put the traffic study in the capital budget as well. Yes. And I think Mrs. Keith is asking that an independent person do the study. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay. Hearing none. Is there a motion you're asking for suspension of the rules? Is that correct?
Yes, please.
What's the pleasure of the committee?
Motion for suspension of the rules?
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Okay. We will vote on it tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if I'm correct, is this the balance of the report from 7 on, or is there another issue that we need to address, Mr.?
Number 9 was the public hearing last week as well, so you might want to temporary time and vote on that tonight.
Okay, okay. What about 7 and 8?
Those will be referred for public hearing at a later date.
Okay. Okay. Number 9 was discussed last week. It's ordinance approving the Home Avenue redevelopment plan, making necessary findings in connection therewith, and declaring an emergency. Are there any questions or concerns about that ordinance? I think Mr. Antonucci is asking us to take time until tonight. May I have a motion for time?
Motion for time.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Anybody? No? All in favor of taking time until tonight?
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, time will be taken. And we're going to take time on the balance, 10 to 20. Is there anything else I need to do, Mr. Keith?
I do believe you have some new legislation.
Is that?
No, okay, I'm sorry. You could be excused.
Thank you very much for your wonderful direction. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
We just start with this budget and finance.
It's never easy when you're trying to follow.
Right.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call a public safety meeting to order, please. If all the council members that are on the Public Safety Committee could take their seats, please. So, everybody is present. We did hold a meeting last week, and we had one item put on the consent agenda, one we suspended the rules on. Can I get approval of last week's meeting minutes?
Motion for approval.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. All right, so we have two new pieces in front of us today. Our first piece is authorizing the mayor or his designee without the formality of publicly advertising for bids to enter into a contract with Exxon Enterprises for the purchase of interview room cameras and related equipment and declare an emergency. And we have Deputy Mayor of Public Safety with us, Charlie Brown. Charlie, if you don't mind introducing your colleagues for the record, please.
Good afternoon, and certainly to my left is Captain Brian Harding. He's in charge of the Police Department's Technical Services Bureau. To his left is the Assistant Commander, Lieutenant Mark Farrar.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The police department is making a request for the purchase of a 4-year contract, essentially, which would mirror the current body-worn camera project that we implemented last year. That's a 5-year contract, so this is coming a year after, so this would be a 4-year contract. And what we're asking the city and council to consider is for the purchase of 13 cameras that would work very similar to the body-worn cameras, and all the data and the digital evidence would be moved up to evidence.com, much like the body-worn camera video evidence.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? That's it? All right. Any questions, committee members? Mr. Swirsky, please.
Just want to make sure that the cameras will be stationed where?
There is a total of 13 cameras.
Right.
9 of the cameras would be in the Detective Bureau area. 3 of the cameras would be in the traffic office for the OVIs, where we do the breathalyzer and the OVI testing. And then that 13th camera would be installed in the Office of Professional Standards.
And those are in our interview rooms when we bring anyone in for interviews. They would take place there, and those would be recorded then.
Thank you. Good question. I do got a question on what you said. Number 13, what did you call that again, and what is that?
Office of Professional Standards. It's the old Internal Affairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Any other questions? Veronica Sims, please. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the amended, is the contract amended to, or is it so we're currently in the contract, right? It's a 5-year contract?
Right. The body-worn camera contract was for a 5-year contract, so this would be in addition to that. It would be a 4-year contract. So it's actually not part of, it's a separate agreement, but all of the contracts would come due for expiration at the same time.
Okay, so we just made it a 4-year, so they, okay.
Correct, ma'am.
Now, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions, comments, anything? Any other council members? All right, Mr. Swirsky.
I just want to thank Mr. Farrar for the great work he's doing at Highland Square, coordinating the auxiliary police and the weekends. It's not an easy thing to put all these things together, but you're doing a great job, and thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. With that, was the recommendation?
Desires for suspension of the rules.
Suspension of the rules. Can I get a motion to suspend the rules, please?
Motion to suspend the rules.
All in favor? Aye. All right, anybody opposed? No? All right, we'll suspend the rules and pass that. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next piece. Ordinance amending and supplementing Title IX, Chapter 92, Animals, Section 92.99 of the Akron Codified Ordinances and declaring an emergency. And this is sponsored by Councilman Neal. I don't know if he has anybody to present. Are you the presenter, John York, or?
I don't know that I'm the presenter, but I can answer any questions.
Okay.
I've written
No,
this.
and hopefully Mr. Neal will take a seat, and if we have any questions, we can ask him also. All right, with that, I don't know who wants to start, one of you two.
Okay, so Councilman Neal requested legislation. He's experiencing an increase in barking dog complaints. Okay. And right now, barking dogs in the animal code is categorized as a a minor misdemeanor. So the maximum penalty would be a $100 fine. What this legislation does is it makes repeat offenders subject to up to 30 days in jail and up to a $250 fine. So basically, if a person were convicted more than once, the judge would have the discretion to, impose a harsher penalty than just a minor misdemeanor.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Neal, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. York. Members of council, this legislation is really coming in to start the dialogue. I don't know about you all, but I have received numerous more complaints of barking dog complaints. Mr. Valley and his folks have helped come out a lot, but what happens is, I think we have one dog warden, and so, okay, so one for each side of town. So what happens is, what they're told is when they have a barking dog complaint, is to call the police. So our police are coming out time after time to address these barking dog complaints when the warden isn't available. More and more of our residents have elderly parents that are suffering from, dementias, Alzheimer's, and I get complaints about how this is impacting them in their sleep. And so I'm sure we will get some comments. Looking for, I'm not saying this is the best legislation. I asked Mr. York to please see what surrounding communities are doing, and because right now, again, I don't know what you're getting, but there's just nothing that people are frustrated because they're told to call the police. They try to record the dogs barking. They're saying that that's not suitable to address their concern. So if we have a place where, I just want to give our department a greater tool to address these complaints, because right now, from where I sit and from the calls that I receive, there's nothing really that our present situation can do to address the concerns that I'm receiving.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Before I open it matter of fact, I do got a couple of questions and concerns, but I want to see if any of my committee members have any questions first. Councilwoman Keith, please.
If I recall correctly, it takes 2 people to file this complaint. It cannot be made without their names. Is that correct? If they're going to come forward. I don't mean calling the police department, but I mean if you're going to press the issue.
It doesn't take two people. It does require somebody to come forward, though, that's willing to be a prosecuting witness on this. And I think what Mr. Neal's talked about is constituents who just want to provide the tape but not come to court. And that is an ongoing issue. Yes, they do want to make a private complaint to me, they want to make a private complaint to Mr. Neal, but they personally do not want to come forward and be the prosecuting witness on these cases. I can't do that. I can't do that in any case. If you're making an allegation against somebody, the Constitution's going to protect the accused, we would actually have to provide that witness information and have them testify.
So it only takes one person, and it cannot be anonymous. It has to be followed. Okay.
Correct. And it's the code currently set up a distinction between evening hours and day hours and the length of time for the dog barking.
And I would find it unusual that a tape would be used unless somebody of authority was taping it, because anybody could tape a dog barking and say it came from this house or another house.
And that's not unusual in our cases. It always comes down to an issue of credibility. And if I could testify and say, I have taken this video of my neighbor's residence for 10 consecutive minutes, showing the dog barking during the evening hours, but I'm there to authenticate it, that's always something we can use at court. But with all evidence, it's an issue of credibility. Do we find this believable? Do we find it unbelievable? And that's always what a judge does, a jury does, to make determinations in our cases.
So the tape is a videotape, not just an audio.
I've had both. I've actually had both. And again, it's just an issue of credibility.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. That makes me call on John Valley. I'm sorry, I know you're sitting there, but I'm going to call upon you. Mr. Valley, I've always been told that it takes two witnesses to come forward and sign a paper or something to take a barking dog incident to court.
I can look into that. I'm not quite positive it takes one or two. I think the chief prosecutor just told us that it only takes one.
Okay. What I would like to do moving forward is I would like to get some kind of meeting, even if it's over in the conference room, to get an update from the animal warden in regards to just overall procedures of barking dogs and some other steps that they take that we deal with as council members, if that's okay? If that's something we can work towards?
Just, set something up, let us know when.
Okay. And then also, Mr. York, you know, I'm kind of in favor of this piece of legislation, but to be honest with you, for me to support this, Councilman Neal, is we need to put a big bite into this. I mean, let's be serious. If we're going to have somebody come forward and, you know, spend their time in court, come down to court, take the time off work, a maximum fine of $100, I mean, I would like to see that raised to $300.
Well, that's what this legislation would do. Right now, every conviction for a barking dog is a minor misdemeanor. What Mr. Neal has proposed is the first offense would still be a minor misdemeanor, but the second and every subsequent offense would be a fourth-degree misdemeanor.
Okay.
$250 for the fine and up to 30 days in jail.
But the first offense is a maximum of $100 fine.
Correct.
I just think that's weak. So what I'm proposing is I'd like to see it larger.
It's the way it's set up, though, statutorily, it's a minor misdemeanor. The way the ordinances are set up, there is a maximum for that potential penalty. So we just have to follow what you already have in the Akron City Code, and we have to follow what the Ohio Revised Code requires as well. Since those are classified as minor misdemeanors, the maximum is 150 or 100, depending on which code section's actually used.
I understand, but
you would have to truly change the classification from minor misdemeanor if you want to make that distinction.
Right. I just think it's kind of a waste of somebody's time, you know, to call the animal warden or call their council person and then somebody to come out. I'm guessing the procedure is the animal warden comes out, right, and asks if the witness wants to, move forward with some kind of charges, or, I mean...
If the dog warden is the individual who heard the dog barking for that length of time, they can ultimately swear out the complaint. Same with police officers. I've had private individuals swear out the complaint too, that they are the one who actually heard the dog barking for that extended period.
Okay. I also called your office today to see if I can get the last 3 years of their clerks' findings in regards to actually how many people actually go to court.
And strangely enough, we didn't get that quick of a turnaround, so as soon as I
Right.
get that, we'll supplement that information to you.
So, moving forward, before I take any other questions, my concerns are, one, I'd like to get together with the animal warden and whoever wants to attend that meeting so we can start getting some updates and some of their job duties, what can be done in regards to barking dogs. I do somewhat support this legislation, but I just believe it should be, we need to sink some teeth into it, if you know what I'm saying, a bigger bite. That's just my opinion. So if there's a way that we can do this, I'd be more than happy to be on board with it. I mean, I even wrote down, and you're probably telling me that's not possible, but it says punishable by a maximum fine of $250 and up to 30 days in jail. I'd like to see that up to $550 or $600. And I know probably maybe some of my colleagues don't agree with that, but I mean, let's quit messing around. That's how I look at it.
And again, that's a reclassification.
Right.
The higher the penalty you want to incur, the higher the classification would ultimately have to be.
Okay. Because then I highlighted here too, due to the inconvenience and annoyance endured by the neighbors and the public at large. So that's actually a good sentence there. All right, any other questions? Mr. Swirsky?
Yeah, Mr. Neal made reference to, I support the intent of this. I'm not sure about all the measures that are currently prescribed. You referred to a request that other ordinances around the country be considered. Is that what went into this? Is that something we need? Yeah.
Well, when I responded to Mr. Neal's request, it was that he might want to ask the administrative staff over here to do the research.
Okay.
But the law department, we would not be doing the research. What I was able to do is write the ordinance that I believe he asked for.
Okay, so you wrote an ordinance based on his initial draft, or?
The request.
Oh,
Yeah, the
there
request.
was a request.
Request for legislation to elevate the penalties for repeat offenders.
Okay.
To beyond the $100 fine.
Okay, so we haven't yet sort of seen how they measure up against the way other cities are handling this, because there might be some benefits to that. But I understand the staffing limitations, but I think that would be another reason to take some time on it.
No, good. Any other questions from committee members? Marilyn, Councilwoman Keith, please.
I apologize, I hadn't thought of this one, but I think, Gert, you might be able to answer it for me. I have had complaints on dogs barking in a house, and there was apparently nothing I was told there is nothing we can do if they are in a home barking. Would that be able to be incorporated in this? Or you don't know what I'm talking about?
I'm not aware of it mattering if it's outdoors or indoors. I mean, when we get a complaint in the 311 call center on barking dogs, our animal wardens go out and investigate every single complaint they get. Obviously, when they get complaints and they go by and there's no barking, they don't hear anything, they're still going to register that address. And they're very much, they're not the most proactive, but they're always reacting from call to call to call to call. They're very similar to our district patrols in the Akron Police Department. When they know that they're in a particular area and they look at their records or notes and they see that they've had barking dog complaints at this address and they got a little bit of time, they're going to go by there and they're going to sit. They're going to sit across the street or the house next door or whatever, but they're going to sit there and try to observe if they do hear the barking dog, and they'll go back and re-inspect these problems. And they also follow up with letters to the property owner stating that we have a ordinance on the book that deals with barking dogs. So they try to be as proactive as they can. And then there was something that was said about calling the police department. Well, obviously, I think everybody knows our animal control officers work pretty much day shift, just like most city employees, but we do have 2 part-timers that are available in the evening and one who's even available on the weekends. And the only time the police department would be called in on this would be these off hours where we don't have an animal warden. So I just want to clarify that.
I think, Mr. Chair, it might be good, because now I have two pieces of misinformation. One is that two people needed to, and somebody did tell me that, and I just had this issue with a dog barking in a house that I was told. I'd have to go back on my notes that since it was in a house, there was absolutely nothing we could do, and I passed that information on to the neighbors, so I feel bad that I don't have accurate information, or it wasn't given to me.
If you look at the current code, there's nothing separating between in the resident and out of the resident.
house.
And especially this time of year with windows open, it's a common complaint.
Okay.
Well, in Maryland, this is what I'm gonna send you an email later today, is I actually have a dog about 100 yards from my property, and I had Sarah, our deputy clerk counsel here, send out a nice friendly letter letting them know that I hear their dog all the time. A couple months go by, I had enough. I contacted Ron Dowdy from the animal control, and I said, listen, you need to help me here. I hear this dog barking nonstop. I've actually sat in front of the house and recorded the dog, and so he did drive by, and he said it was barking out of a third-story window. There's nothing he can do. So that's why moving forward, we need to have this discussion. So I'm going to ask you, let's try to put something together around 12:30 in one of the two conference rooms, invite the animal warden, whoever else wants to be part of that discussion, because, yeah, I'm the one that was being told that you have to have two witnesses, not just one, but two, because then next thing you know is what I was told is you get into this neighbor dispute issue. So I really think we need to move in that direction, please.
Reach out to your staff here, have them set up a meeting, let me know, and I'll make sure that we have the appropriate people here.
So you're asking me to have Sarah or Holly reach out to the animal warden?
I'm asking your staff to initiate this meeting.
I'll initiate the meeting myself. So I'll move forward and do it myself, and I'll do it on a Monday around 12:30. Thank you. I appreciate that, John. Mr. Kilby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's a good idea to have some discussion, see what other cities are doing. This is a very tough thing to do anything about. It's always been a tough thing to do anything about. Even when we had more animal control wardens, it was a tough thing to do anything about. I guess, just to raise the fine without tweaking the ordinance somehow doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. I just got a question. I mean, I know the dog owner is responsible for their dog, but is there any authority to take the dog away? Can we do that? Have the animal control warden impound the dog?
Statutorily, there's very limited things we can do to take somebody's property, which is an animal, and it's usually around the vicious dog, whether there's a bite or a safety concern that would ultimately allow for that.
Not just for barking then, huh? Okay, all right.
And part of the conversation was sometimes with these individuals is, I got this dog from my son, he left, and I really don't want the dog. And that's sometimes a conversation we can have. If they want to release their property to us, we can definitely make for that allowance.
So, I think, didn't we pass an ordinance here? I might have been off council when they did this. You can no longer have a dog tied up in your backyard. Is that the law now?
Tethering, correct.
Tether? They can't be tethered. They have to be in a cage. So that doesn't seem to be, that doesn't seem to be enforceable. What do we do if we see a dog tied up in the backyard barking? What do we do? I mean, can somebody come out and say, hey, do we send the Humane Society out? Or who enforces that tethering ordinance?
Anybody. I've seen the City of Akron Police Department sign that. Our own animal wardens have signed that. Humane Society, by all means, has authority to sign those as well. And all of those different organizations have used that particular code section.
Right. I wish we would have done this maybe in the spring, because we're going into the winter season now, so it seems to me that it's more of a problem in the summertime when people have their windows open, but I guess it's anytime we can address this problem, it's good.
Yeah, Bruce, we come out with a new animal cruelty ordinance. I don't know if you were on council or not, but hopefully we'll put that in your mailbox. That's something that I worked with now Captain Beitzel on, and obviously we mimic the Cleveland ordinance. So, all right, with that, Mr. Neal?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to say, again, first let me say I appreciate Mr. Valley and his department, but I had one meeting where we met with some residents who were just frustrated. At that meeting, I think we had 2 police officers, 2 or 3 people from his department, and I'm just counting the cost. You know, it seems like it's with all the things we have to deal with, we're talking about barking dogs, but for people who live around that situation, they get frustrated because they call and they call and they call. The purpose of this, and I know as Mr. Kilby said and some of you have said, this is a delicate issue. You know, it's one of those things like you have a toothache until you get to the dentist and then it doesn't ache. Dog is barking until somebody shows up and then the dog isn't barking anymore. But for those residents who are held hostage by dog owners who just leave the dogs out there and let them bark and bark, I'd like for us to have something, as you said, that will let them know that we're serious about it. Some of these things in here are kind of stiff, but I believe when we had the one piece, dealing with the tethered dog, there were folks that came out to help us tweak that. And I'm hoping that when folks hear about this, whatever those groups are, they can help us put something together. But something I think as we go into this new budget cycle as council, one of the things we may want to look at is funding either the dog warden area better, or looking at, I know some communities have volunteer groups that, you know, they love animals, they want to make sure they're taken care of, and they help communities kind of like police this situation. Because when a dog is barking constantly, it's stressed in some kind of way. Not looking for anything hurried on this. I want us to do it right, but I do think we need one more tool in the toolbox for those who are dealing with this to be able to use in regards to the barking dog issue. So, thank you, sir.
No, thanks, Mr. No, I want to thank you for bringing this because I somewhat agree with this. You know, dogs should be barking at mail carriers walking down the street. Those folks that come and check our electric meters, you know, squirrels or whatever it might be, but constant barking. I get it all the time. These elderly residents, they're fed up. And I just used a scenario that I just used about a month ago, 100 yards from my property. And really there was nothing they could do. So moving forward, what we'll do is I'll reach out to the animal warden and get him here on a Monday for us, and hopefully everybody can attend. And then number 2 is, Gert, if you don't mind, trying to supply maybe the last 3 years of how many cases actually went to court.
I'll try and go back.
Before I ask for a vote, I do see Councilwoman Samples has her hand up. Please.
I'm going to grab your mic. I just have a quick question. As far as a threshold, when do you file charges against someone? As I read through 9214, I don't see where we would actually, when do you actually file charges against someone? What's the threshold for that? By the time we get to 9299I, we're on the 3rd-degree misdemeanor where there's an unsuspendable fine of $500. But what is the threshold? How do we know if it's not a neighbor that you're having an issue with that's calling because you just have a bad relationship with them and your dog is barking and now they know there's this ordinance and they're going to keep calling? At what point are we summoning them to court? So if we could sort of kind of figure out how we get to that threshold.
It's probable cause. It's the exact same threshold in all criminal cases. Is there probable cause? So
again, somebody would have to actually give
correct. And it's always, even when the police officers are making that decision, it's an issue of credibility. So it's that all throughout the process.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No, thank you. And something that I've done over the years is actually when I get a complaint, I'll actually go in the neighborhood, maybe pull down the street, kind of listen for that animal. And if so, Sarah, she does a wonderful job in regards to sending out a few barking dog letters for me. So if you guys want to try to draft up a letter and send it out, and I've had a few folks call me, and then sometimes I don't have no people call me, and then I always check on the neighbor like a month or so down the road, and they'll be like, hey, Mr. Kamer, I haven't heard that dog in a while, so thank you for what you've done, if the letter worked. So with that, you're okay with time? No, that's good, I appreciate it. This is a good conversation.
Motion for time?
Got a motion? Second, all in favor? Aye. Aye, all right, we'll take some time and...
Just real quick, I just want to be clear. I mean, this is council legislation, and my point being on setting up a meeting, I think everybody knows John Valley here, and I don't shy down from setting up any meetings. This is a council initiative, and I thought it was appropriate that it comes from council, either the staff or you as the public safety chairman. That's what I meant by that, but I would appreciate that you contact me, the time and place when the meeting will take place, and I'll make sure that we have the appropriate people
All right,
there.
thank you. I appreciate that. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
248. Okay. Well, maybe I'll touch base.
You see that schedule right in front of your elbow? Look right in front of you, look at your nose, look down. And it's also on your agenda every Monday. Well, whoever's first goes first. Why don't you just relax and have a seat while Parks and Recreation goes? When are the meetings?
Park and Recreation will meet in 2 minutes. Park and Recreation? Yes, 2 minutes.
Now, be recovered. Miss Samples wanted to go in front of you. I said, well, you go ask Mr. Neal. I don't think she's going to ask. 2 or 3 times.
Members of Park and Recreation Committee can take their seats, please. I'd like to call Park and Recreation Committee meeting to order. We have minutes dating back to September 10th. If I could get approval of those last meeting's minutes, please. Get a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any legislation before us. We do have Mr. Valley and Mr. Hardy. Ask Mr. Hardy to come forward first. This is a follow-up. You know, we've been trying to learn more about Lock 3, and so he's going to give us a report. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have, Holly made copies, so if we want, we can make copies right now. Holly, I know you're listening, so there you go. What you have before you is the preliminary results of the survey that we conducted through Akron Civic Commons this summer. We had, as you can see there, 710 responses, and I'll just briefly go through it and then take any questions. Again, the purpose of our engagement through Civic Commons is to take a look at Block 3, get some feedback, and then as things begin to develop downtown, how can we improve upon the city's most successful pop-up? I think most of us forget that Block 3 was just meant to be a temporary space until development came, and now it brings forth over 300,000 people a year for different activities. So the first question was, what do you enjoy most about parks in general? And you'll see that the responses are mentioned. You didn't get on the list unless it was mentioned at least 10 times, and they're listed in order of frequency. So the top 3 were nature, concerts or events, and the space, just being in the space. What are the first 3 words that come to mind when you think of Block 3? The top 3 were music, fun, concerts, followed by entertainment, community, safe spaces, Christmas, Rock the Lock, etc., and inadequate parking. There were negative things on there as well. Why do you visit Block 3? No surprise, the vast majority of people come down to Block 3 for entertainment. That was 83%. Leisure, 13%, and there's a very low threshold. Only 1% of folks that we were able to survey said they didn't know what Block 3 was or where it was, which is great. So there's a lot of recognition both within Akron and outside of Akron of what Block 3 is and what it offers. What is your favorite part about Block 3? Again, the top 3 were concerts, music, and entertainment. Not a surprise. That's Block 3's bread and butter. But some other things were interesting. While parking is definitely a concern that was raised, nearby parking and free parking was something that people also raised as a favorite aspect. They enjoyed the festivals, the ice skating, but clearly the concerts and the music and the events that we put on are the #1 reason why people come down to the park. We also asked then folks to rank how they perceive Block 3 as a space. And we asked them to rank between providing entertainment, providing community and public gathering spaces for nonprofits, and offer a park setting downtown. Again, no surprise that the vast majority of folks thought that the #1 reason for Block 3 should be to provide entertainment. But I think it's also important to note that almost half of the respondents also thought that it was incredibly important to provide a community gathering space for nonprofits and also just to provide a beautiful park downtown. That's not something that, honestly, we've thought a whole lot about in the first 16, 17 years of Block 3. How can it be a park when it's not a concert venue? What amenities do you wish were at Block 3? The top 3 were more food, better restrooms and bathrooms, and more seating. I think shade was #4, but it can go also with seating. We heard a lot of people say that, and I think all of us have been there in the middle of summer for a concert when it's 80 degrees and the sun is still up and there's no real place to get shade or get out of the sun. What do you want to experience when you are not at a concert or event at Block 3? The top 3 were more food, again, improve the space itself so it's more park-like, and places to walk and relax. I think it's also important to note that kids' activities and family activities were in the top tier of responses. I've heard that obviously the Akron Children's Museum has been wildly successful, but there isn't a lot of children's play, outdoor play downtown. Block 3 is an obvious place for that. It's something that we've thought about doing. We've had conversations with both the Children's Museum as well as GPD group that does inclusive playgrounds for children, and they're interested in maybe doing something down at Block 3. So clearly that's something that people are looking for that's missing. Here's one that I know has come up, and Councilman Neal, you've brought this up as well as Councilwoman Samples. Are you willing to pay a higher ticket price for high-profile events, or do you prefer to keep similar entertainment for little or no cost? 49% said unequivocally yes, they'd pay a higher ticket price for more named bands, the actual bands to come and see. Only 24% said no, and when you look at the actual frequent mentioned responses, we obviously have to make sure, and we always will make sure, that there is low to no cost programming at Lock 3. That's never going to go away. But in terms of how we continue to make Lock 3 more sustainable from a financial perspective, clearly there's an appetite and a willingness for people to come to Lock 3 and pay a higher ticket price depending on the group. So I think we can answer that question with good data now. Why do you visit Lock 2? So the first thing is, do we all know what Lock 2 is? Because clearly 57% of Akronites don't know what Lock 2 is. And Lock 2 is that wonderful space behind Canal Park where the canal boat replica is. It's right sandwiched between Akron Children's. And it's a beautiful space that is clearly underutilized, and this survey shows it's mainly because nobody has ever heard of it. So this was incredibly important for the Civic Commons group as well as the city to recognize that there's a pretty significant investment back there, and people are not walking through the towpath to go there with any real regularity. So what can we do? Why do you visit Lock 4? And 31% said entertainment, 20% said leisure, but 41% said they don't know what Lock 4 is or where it is. Again, we hope with the Bowery project, the Main Street project, that we can change that, but it's one of the most beautiful outdoor spaces in the city, and almost half of the respondents did not know what it was or where it was. So outside of Lock 3, Locks 2 and 4, which are all connected by a trail, we clearly have some work to do. And so finally, on the last page, questions 11 and 12. 11, we want people to feel invited, comfortable, and safe in Lock 3. What elements are important to achieve this? The top 3 were continue to provide security, continue to provide police, but improve the lighting. We heard that quite a bit through the survey. And then lastly, please rank the following elements for level of importance in any city park, with 1 being the most important and 12 being the least important. And I will read through all of these. So number 1 was lighting. Number 2, security elements. 3, ease of entrance. 4, some type of entertainment area or stage. 5, landscaping. 6, multi-purpose seating. 7, shady spots in the summer and warm spots in the wintertime. 8, open and contemplative spaces for relaxation. 9, small shops for either coffee or alcohol. 10, better signage. 11, better playgrounds. And then 12, splash pads. So what are we going to do with all this information? Our goal is to ask the Civic Commons for us to take this information, work with the GPD group to come up with not necessarily a site plan, but an idea of how we can incorporate this feedback into both the physical space of Lock 3, but also the programmatic space. And we feel confident that we'll be able to do that. Other general updates, I know that the committee we've talked before about how we can get more input on the types of shows that we have. I think that's something that we are open to, and we right now have a link on our website for folks. Anyone can suggest an artist or a group. Now is a perfect time to talk about that because we'll be going into Winterfest, and so we have all of winter to work on summer programming and booking shows. Speaking of Winterfest, we're getting ready to kick that off. The tree lighting ceremony will be the Friday after Thanksgiving, with the Welcome Santa Parade downtown the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So, so far so good, but I welcome any questions, concerns, feedback on the survey, and any thoughts you may have. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy, for the detailed information. Any questions from members of committee? Ms. Sims?
First, a comment. Potty parity would be helpful at Lock 3. Were all of the residents, all 700, are those all Akron residents, no outside folks?
No, it was a mix. So we did a mix of getting out into some of the neighborhoods and doing point in time. These were almost all point in time, meaning we stopped somebody and said, hey, would you like to take a survey? We did have it available on the Civic Commons website, Lock 3's website, and Downtown Akron Partnership's website, so some of those. But most of these were either point in time at a neighborhood event like Art Expo or something of that nature, or they were at a Lock 3 event itself. So I would say, I can get that breakdown, but just for the purposes of our discussion today, conservatively, it's probably 50-50. Probably
About
50% people coming in from out of town and 50% Akron residents.
That may explain why you have such low numbers at 2 and possibly at 4, but I'd be interested in knowing what those numbers were. Thank you.
Mr. Hardy, the one thing that comes to mind is that people always want to be able to have input. And so, especially I know with Lock 3, when it comes to, people definitely are willing to pay more for the right type of entertainment. And I don't know, I see how we could even use that in seeking to get more information for Lock 3 and creating an event in and of itself, of maybe having samplings of, family events, entertainment, and making it an affair for people to come and participate in the survey and the engagement. Because I'll just be honest, people are willing to pay, but there is a genre of music that is aging out. And people want to see some relevant groups,
Yes.
not where they perform and they got to sit down in between the act. So they're willing to pay, but it has to be the right group. And I know this because honestly, I've got family that drives up from Columbus and I didn't even know they came to all of them. Anytime there's an event, they drive up from Columbus. I know folks come from Youngstown, Canton, and Cleveland is a no-brainer. So I talked to some people from here that went to Edgewater Park, and then there's another park up in Cleveland. They had some really nice, like jazz, and I think they had the OJs and some other people. So I would just like to encourage, if there's some way where we can engage our citizens in, this survey is great, but really letting them see that, hey, their input is going to translate.
Yeah. And that's really the spirit of the Civic Commons, as you know, and I think a prototyping event is certainly not out of the question, and so I'll add that to my ask of Civic Commons staff, and there's nothing that says we can't test some of these ideas when the warm weather comes back, or even the cold weather, so we'll definitely try and do some prototyping.
And then what because the key for us also is if we are charging for those events, what does it, hopefully we broke even and did better with Cameo.
We did. We broke even and maybe even made a little, but we at least broke even this year.
Well, I mean, and so those things are good, but I think, just engaging our citizens, they'll help drive that train for us. So I know it's late in the day. There's other questions I have, but Mr. Valley, did you have anything, sir?
I am here because you asked for an update on the 2018 summer concert
Yes,
series,
sir.
but I did provide information I put in everybody's mailbox.
Okay, thank you. So everybody, please take a look at that. We'll dive into this a little bit more because I did want to get into the survey that's out into the communities. But at this time, just out of respect the time, if there aren't any more questions, Ms. Sims?
So the role of GDP would be what? Will they just work closely? Of course, I do a lot of work with Civics Commons, but
Yeah.
Are they working closely with the residents? My follow-up to that is, when you collected the data, was there any data for contacting folks who use the survey, particularly those who are local, that could be part of the group that engages in terms of what we do next for some of those spaces?
Sure. I will get back to you on whether or not we collected contact information. I'm not sure about that. GPD's role, because the city doesn't have landscape architect or design functions anymore, although we're working on a solution for that too. Civic Commons grant paid for GPD to essentially work through the survey and would show people pictures of, like, this is what shade could look like and those types of things. Now, as we move into more of the prototyping stage, GPD and their landscape architects can test some of these ideas before we make permanent improvements. So they're really just in a consultant type of role. We are driving the boat along with the Civic Commons core team.
If there aren't any more questions from members of committee or members of council, I want to thank Mr. Hardy and Mr. Valley for coming in, but out of respect to time, we can consider ourselves adjourned. Thank you.
1 minute, we'll start public utilities.
640 per tablet, might make a copyright. Oh, because that's a 3-year toll. If you divide that by 3, it's about.
We're in the neighborhood, about that, about the whole pad. You guys, there's a lot of guns. You know, guys hang out there and carry guns. But you guys,
If we could get approval on our previous meeting minutes from our last meeting.
Motion.
Need a second? All in favor? Okay. Bob, if we could pull number 5. We just have one, number 6. Ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent without the formality of publicly advertising for bids to purchase up to 30, is it Lenovo? Mobile tablet personal computers with operating software and maintenance and protection plans from Lenovo government for the use by the water distribution field personnel and declaring an emergency. Mr. Leto?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and members of the committee. This is to buy tablets for our personnel and water distribution. So we worked with the IT department and the safety forces to make sure that these were compatible with what we're using now. So the people in the field will have these tablets to put real-time information in as they are performing their job.
Okay. Any questions from committee? Any questions from any council people? What would be your pleasure?
Consent's fine.
Okay. Can I get a motion for consent? All in favor? Okay. Reminder that we have a public meeting hearing this evening at 7 o'clock in regards to our...
Gas aggregation.
That's it. Gas irrigation, 7 p.m., public hearing. And if we don't have anything else coming before us, if I can get a motion for adjournment, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Motion for...
We just dealt with that one, I think. Rules. I don't know. Which one is it?
I'd like to call the Rules Committee.
This is from last week.
We don't meet very often. Where's this? I'd like to call the Rules Committee to order. All are present except for Councilman Fusco. We have, I'd like an approval from our minutes. Second, I had a, thank you. Councilwoman Amobian seconded with Councilman Hoke approving it. Okay, we have one piece before us today. This is a resolution approving and confirming the reappointment by Mayor Horgan of Gina K. Maddox as a member of the Akron Civil Rights Commission, approving and confirming the reappointment by Mayor Horgan of John Alvarez Turner as an alternate member of the Akron Civil Rights Commission and declaring an emergency. Is there anyone here from administration to speak on this? You better run.
to speak on.
That's civil rights one, oh, not public safety. Can you speak on that? Okay, thank you so much. Mr. York from the Law Department will speak on the reappointments of these two people.
Thank you. The terms of Gina K. Maddox and John Alvarez Turner expired, and the legislation would renew their terms. Ms. Maddox is a full member of the Akron Civil Rights Commission, and Mr. Alvarez Turner is an alternate member.
Is there any discussion from the members of the committee on this?
I believe their resumes are attached, so they speak for themselves.
Okay, are there anyone else? Okay, hearing and seeing none, are there any comments or concerns from the other members of council that are in the chambers? What is the pleasure?
Consent would be fine.
Okay. Do I have a motion for consent?
So move.
And a second, I have a motion from Councilwoman Mobian and a second from Mr. Hoke. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this passes on the consent agenda. Is there anything else to come before this committee? If not, then we are adjourned. Right into Budget and Finance.
I'd like to call to order the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. We have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
So move.
Whoa. What? Just relax. Give me a minute.
I'm ready.
I didn't get the last one. You guys are too fast. Okay, sir.
All right. We had a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the last meeting. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. We have 3 items before us today. The first item is an ordinance authoring the issuance of a bond of the city in a principal amount not to exceed $8,500,000 for sale to the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund for the state of Ohio to finance the costs of improvements to the city's wastewater system, pledging certain revenues from the city's wastewater system on a subordinated basis to secure the payment of the principal of and interest on the bond, and authorizing the execution and delivery of the bond, the trust agreement and other documents, and the taking of other actions related to the issuance and sale of the bond and declaring an emergency. Mr. Fricker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the first of 3 pieces. All of these are 45-year sewer bonds, similar to the legislation we introduced 2 weeks ago, where we've gotten longer-term financing. We've actually passed loan legislation for all 3 of these projects previously, but now that we have 45-year financing, we are passing bond ordinances for each of these so we can get that longer-term financing.
Very good. Questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Amobian?
I know we passed something recently for 45 years. Is this something new? 45 years?
It's similar to, so this 45-year financing is available through the Water Pollution Loan Fund, and this is similar to the project that we passed legislation for 2 weeks ago.
But it's only through the water.
Yeah, there's sewer. These are all sewer related.
Right.
This first project actually is not CSO, so it's easy to forget that we still have to maintain other components of our sewer system. So this first project is our annual sanitary sewer reconstruction program that we are financing with these bonds.
Any other questions or comments? Would be your, yes, Ms. Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to comment that I know that we were hoping at times to get this 45 years, so that we've come a long way from where we first started, thinking that this would be on the burden of right now everyone to get it paid off in our lifetime. And So I want to congratulate the people that have been behind that, working so hard, and the relationship that we have built, that we are now looking at something. 45 years is a long time to have to pay on something, but having some of that burden lifted is very significant and much appreciated.
Right, and our engineers have been,
Really appreciate
doing
it.
a lot of work in order to secure that longer-term financing, and they've done it for, I think this would be 5 projects now that we have it on.
I just want to be around to see the bond paid off.
Wishful
Wouldn't we
thinking,
all?
Mr. Freeman.
We'll put it on your grave.
You want a motion?
What's your pleasure, Mr. Fricker?
Consent agenda.
So move.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a bond of the city in a principal amount not to exceed $3,500,000 for sale to the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund of the State of Ohio to finance the cost of improvements to the city's wastewater system, pledging certain revenues from the city's wastewater system on a subordinated basis to secure the payment of the principal of and interest on the bond, and authorizing the execution and delivery of the bond, the trust agreement and other documents, and the taking of other actions related to the issuance and sale of the bond, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a similar 45-year bond. This is for the Kelly Conveyance CSO RAC 3 project.
Questions, comments? Ms. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I should probably know this, and I do not. Is this a variable interest rate, or is this fixed?
No, it's a fixed interest
Fixed
rate. It
for
will be at the
45
time that we
years.
actually sign the bond agreement, that interest rate will be fixed for 45 years.
That's terrific. Thank you.
Have a motion for consent?
So move.
Motion and second is made. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Finally, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a bond of the city in a principal amount not to exceed $3,500,000 for sale to the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund of the State of Ohio to finance the costs of improvements to the city's wastewater system, pledging certain revenues from the city's wastewater system on a subordinated basis to secure the payment of the principal of and interest on the bond, and authorizing the execution and delivery of the bond, the trust agreement, and other documents, and the taking of other actions related to the issuance and sale of the bond, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, 45-year bond for the Chittenden Green Project, CSO RAC 3.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Motion for consent?
So move.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll see that these items are placed on the consent agenda, and all the folks that are doing all the hard work that we don't see in here.
These guys are all behind me. They're the ones that do all the
okay, there
hard
they are. We see them. Thank you so much for your hard work. We appreciate it, and the next generation appreciates it as well. Yeah. And we are adjourned. Thank you.
Right. Correct. The what? The fourth piece is time.
That was number 6 that you talked about.
Talking about Jet Road, Signet Jewelers? Yeah. Correct. Yeah, suspension of the rules. They're all in temporary time, which means till tonight. That's the third one, the medical marijuana. Yeah. They're not pulling any shenanigans. They got more money. They got more money tied up in that thing. I don't know what. These three